Welcome back to season 2 of Energetically You, where we talk all things healthy habits, abundant mindset, and optimal wellness. I'm your host, Megan Swan, a mindset and wellness coach. I love helping women optimize their wellness through plant-based nutrition, movement, mindfulness, and mindset practices that having them feel more aligned with who they truly are and confident in their own skin. I'm the creator of the Sustainable Integrated Wellness Approach. I am also living in Mexico, and I have been for the last 12 years. At 30, I sold everything and went on my own eat, pray, love journey, if you will. And now at 42, I'm still on my first stop, loving life and feeling more empowered than ever before. This podcast is for incredible humans who are interested in feeling more aligned with who they truly are, confident in their own skin, and able to make more empowered decisions for themselves going forward in their future. So let's dive in. Welcome back to Energetically You. I'm your host, Megan Swan. I am so excited to talk with Laura Haehl today. She is a yoga instructor, Reiki Master, and intuitive guide. She loves to help people access and trust their intuition. We share that deep inspiration. Specifically, she does this by helping people learn to make intuitive decisions. No more pro-con lists. No more looking at all the possibilities. Ooh, I can't wait to dig into this. Instead, Laura wants to help you learn to access your own inner guru so you can feel confident taking your next steps. She also has a passion for cardology, the astrology and numerology of the playing cards. This is right where I want to focus our conversation because it's just been so interesting learning my card. And she has this beautiful website where you can learn more about your card and what it means for you too. So welcome, Laura. I'm so excited for our conversation. As I was reading your bio, I see that we're very aligned in many ways, but I'm excited to talk about your courses in the cardology. I was going through my card over the weekend, and then I started looking up each of my kids and my husband, and now I'm a little obsessed. So we'll just dive in. Let's start with, how are you and how's your day been?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Actually, today was pretty busy, but yeah, I'm feeling like things are winding down, so I'm ready to just chat.
Amazing. So we really share this passion for helping people make aligned, intuitive decisions. So I wanted to start there. How did you arrive at loving to do that as well? Is it more starting with your own journey, or was there some other catalyst?
It was definitely my own journey. Back in 2009, I was a full-time high school Spanish teacher, and I got this really weird food allergy illness, and it kind of felt like I had food poisoning off and on for just several times a day. So, food poisoning, it's like you have it and it lasts a little while and then it's over. But this would happen off and on. And luckily I had a psychic reading a couple of years before that, and the woman told me that I was going to have a food allergy issue. So that popped into my head. And my dad's a family physician. So I said, Dad, I really feel like I've got some kind of food allergy problem. Well, he told me I had IBS, and I said, you've been telling me I have IBS for years. It's kind of a diagnosis. It's not a real diagnosis. And this is a lot different. This is not the same thing. So I went to an allergy doctor and I just got a blood test right away, and it showed that I was really allergic to several things, to different foods. And then, so I went to a skin prick doctor, and that doctor, basically was listing off all of these foods that he told me I wasn't going to be able to eat for a while. And then he said, you're never going to have eggs again. And I was sort of just paralyzed by the whole thing, not really thinking, not really kind of responding. And in my head, when he said that, I heard no really loud. And part of me was like, wait, who was that? So I finished the thing, and they were showing me like all these recipes, and I could make my own salad dressings. And I just was not in that kind of headspace at the time. So I just left there, cried a little bit, and then thought to myself, I refuse to live like this. There is no way. This came on out of nowhere. I'm going to get rid of it. And I started just doing energy work or going to see energy healers and just doing anything that I could think of. And eventually I got it all taken care of, and I'm able to eat eggs again now. And all of that stuff that was on that list is all gone. I really think it was a catalyst for kind of like getting on this path that I'm on now. But I go all the way back to that because it was me really listening to myself and not the person in the white coat with all the experience.
Standing and credentials.
Yeah, the credentials. I mean, we give our power away so often. And it was just me saying, I refuse to live like this. So that brought me through becoming a Reiki Master, training people in Reiki, teaching yoga, studying hypnotherapy, and doing all these different things. And now I just want to work with people on using all of the skills that I have and the practices that I have to help other people work on their intuition, which is a skill and is one that everyone has and is something that we can all practice and learn. And it's just like any other skill. You have to pay attention to it. You have to give it time, and you have to learn how it works for you. So that's what I'm working with now.
Amazing. Well, I have a lot of follow-up questions, but let's go back first. Can you tell us a little bit about, when you were teaching Spanish, at that point, before you got physically ill, were you feeling like unsatisfied in that job? Like, was it on your radar that you needed some sort of change and you weren't addressing it, or it really wasn't like that at all?
No, I was totally wiped out. Here's the thing, and this is I'm glad you asked this question because I hadn't really thought about it this way before, but it's like I hadn't considered until that time that I could just have a job that I enjoyed. And I sort of became a teacher because you can retire early and you get summers off, and it's job security. So I had made it all the wrong decisions, or I had chosen it for all the wrong reasons, not for like some kind of heart passion thing, although I do love Spanish. But, but so it was like, it just had never occurred to me that you could just choose to live a life out of passion. And it took me a while to kind of come around to that, but I really feel like that was the catalyst. And I think it was, I had also picked up working in the summers at an immersion program in Spain. So I was kind of actually working year round, and I was volunteering and working as like the prom coordinator and the prom like faculty advisor and this big fundraiser they do for prom. So I just had taken on way too much, and I really hated it by the end. And it was really the schedule that I hated. So I think it was for me physically too long of a day. And energetically, I'm sensitive. And so I didn't know that at the time. And, you're seeing 150 teenagers every day. So it just was, it was like, I don't know if I was getting the message and ignoring it. I think probably that was it, because I had done my yoga teacher training 2 years before. And I think that was my opportunity to really kind of make the change. And I didn't do it. So it was coming, but it just hadn't occurred to me to just follow happiness or follow passion until I finally quit that job.
So it definitely sounds like you were burnt out and not in love with it. So I'm glad that you found this new path. How do you describe, sort of the muscle building of the skill? Can you paint the picture, like some of the steps that you walk people through? And, is there like a time frame that you give people, or is it really very personal journey where you come to have this stronger security and trusting your intuition?
Yeah, it's definitely a personal journey. I have a 3-element process and a little free course on my website. So the first step I say to people is you have to know yourself. So to me, there's a million ways to do that, but it's understanding things like, do you take on the energy of other people? Do you get really excited about other people's plans and you're not able to distinguish what's really for you and what's not for you? And I think a lot of tools that are out there that can help with that are things like astrology and then the cards, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. So there's just that element of continually kind of questioning and getting to know yourself. Maybe you're journaling, just looking at how you react to things. And then the second piece to this is clearing your energy. So this again is another thing that you can do in a lot of different ways, but it can be as simple as maintaining a regular workout schedule, doing yoga, your kind of lifestyle, keeping the energy clear, eating well and things like that. But it's also in the moment when you're trying to decide something, it's kind of centering yourself and clearing the like static and all the junk out of your, I kind of think of it as like clearing it out of your field so that your energy feels clear when you're trying to make the decision in the moment. And then the third piece of this is maximizing your skills, which is actually doing practices that can help you. And things like one of the practices I give people is to just understand that part of what you're doing is feeling the energy in your body. So like if you think about going to your favorite restaurant and then think about going to a restaurant that you absolutely would never want to eat at and getting that baseline feeling of the difference of those two things in your body, like imagining yourself walking into each of those places and what does that feel like to you in your body? So for me, a lot of times the restaurant I would never want to eat at is restrictive. And it's like you can feel the energy kind of shrinking in and closing in on you. And then when you go to your favorite place, you feel it expanding and opening up and out. So it's coming up with those baseline sensations because the feeling is so subtle that it's something you have to get used to what that feeling is. And then that's just one example. I have a bunch of others, practices that people can do to start to work with how it works for them, because it's going to be different for everyone. For some people, feeling it in their body is going to be a lot stronger. For other people, they're going to have that visual ability to kind of almost like see a picture in their mind's eye and that kind of thing.
I love that example of the restaurants because it's such like a visceral, like reaction that you have to one kind of, your favorite food versus your least favorite or, yeah. And I love your 3-step process. So where you did yoga and then Reiki. And so that's, I'm guessing, your go-to way of clearing energy, or do you really do kind of multiple energy clearing practices?
I do a lot of different stuff. I'm not a very good habit person. I don't really I'm not consistent. I think I have too much Aries in my chart to constantly be like trying something new. So I'll do everything from Qigong to taking a walk to swimming to playing tennis to doing yoga to just taking a few deep breaths to kind of I do like an imaginary like white light wash sometimes when I'm wrapping something up. Like I was doing a day full of readings the other day, card readings for people. So I just imagine like all of that energy kind of washing off of me into the ground and clearing. I do like energy clearing in the shower. I mean, I think the hardest thing for me is to be aware in the moment that it needs to be done, because I tend to be on to the next thing, on to the next thing, on to the next thing. And so it's the hardest thing for me was to pause and to take that time to just that stillness, just that moment to feel the sensations shift when I'm either trying to make a decision or when I'm finishing up something and I need to clear the energy.
Yeah, I first was introduced to the whole idea when I took a yoga teacher training, and one of my beloved teachers was taught. This is back when, I don't know, I haven't been in actual yoga class for years, but when you were as a teacher adjusting students and like just being aware that after, even if you're not physically interacting with the students, you essentially can pick up a lot of energy as a teacher. And to go and wash your hands with cold water and sort of like visualize, leaving the energy of the class and the students there and not taking it with you. And I'll have to say at that point in my life, that was 15 years ago, I could kind of get on board, but I wasn't in tune. I didn't, I wanted to believe it, but I wasn't really sure. And now as a coach, although I did it, and I feel like to this day, that's one of the easiest place that I can feel my energy being cleared is in cold water. We have a pool here. And like, sometimes I just like submerge, like basically do like a cannonball several times in like the fetal position in cold water. And I can feel it's like really cleansing. But now as a coach, I really feel, like I'm helping people often with like really intense things, sometimes trauma, even certainly small T traumas, or things that are just, overflowingly emotional for them. And in order to be in that compassionate space for them, I'm there with them. And so it became clear very early on that I needed some sort of very clear ritual in order to, hold that compassionate space, but not have it affect me in the long term and carry it with me the rest of the day, or like let it build up and all those things. So I'm sure you find the same thing.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny because really we've talked about all these techniques, but really it's just your intention more than anything, and your awareness. And like, to me, we're the directors of our energy. So it's just up to you to direct it. And, one of the funny things from back when I was doing a lot of yoga, one of my friends would go into the yoga class, and she would get on a mat, and then all of a sudden she would have like pain in one of her knees. And she finally realized she was picking up the pain of this guy that was always in class who had pain in his knee. She was actually feeling his pain. So what we came up with back then was to say, "You're shit, my mat." You're shit, my mat. So that you're just creating that energetic separation. And sometimes it just flicks off. And when you're, whether you're coaching someone or you're just kind of energetically sensitive, if you can just think, this is my field, my energy, my body, and that's theirs, their field, their energy, their body. I mean, it's something as simple as that, but you're just like consciously saying, I can feel their sadness, or I can feel their whatever they're going through. And like, you sense it in your body, and you just say, okay, that's not mine. This happened to me actually after I quit teaching, and I finally was not having like the Sunday night anxiety anymore. Two of my friends were at my house on a Sunday night, and all of a sudden I felt all this anxiety, and I thought, wait, I'm anxious, but I'm not anxious. I haven't been anxious in months on a Sunday night. And then I realized one of them is anxious, and I'm just feeling it. The problem is it feels like yours. You're going to feel anxiety in your body the way you feel anxiety. So it's really hard to separate what's someone else's and what's not. And all you really have to do is say, if this isn't mine, like, I don't want to feel it, send it back, or send it to the earth. The earth can recycle it for you. So if you just make that distinction, then you're able to kind of keep your energy full while you're still holding space for someone else. So it's like, I think of kind of when you're holding space for someone, like when you're in a coaching session, it's like you're the container. It's like if you're a Tupperware container, if it's a glass container, the food's not absorbing into the container. It's just being held, and then you clean it out and it's all clean. So you can kind of think of it like that too. One of the things when I was teaching Reiki, we would talk about like, you put on like an energy condom, over your body, and then you're touching people, your hands are still in the condom. And then when you reach back and you're not touching them anymore, you're still inside the condom. Like, that barrier is never broken, hopefully.
Too funny. All right. Well, let's get into the cards, because I feel like I have been living under a rock, because I'm, fairly far down the woo rabbit hole. I'm a huge fan of tarot cards. I have oracle cards, and it was mind blowing to me that there used to be this marriage of they all came from the same place essentially, or you can, tell us specifically the story as best you know it, or best you tell it. But also, it was like such a huge part of my childhood, playing cards, like this very deep, I would argue, spiritual connection. Although as a child, I wouldn't have looked at that with my grandparents. Like, it was very meaningful for them, and it was like time shared. And so it's such an important thing in my life, but it's only been a week now that I've known that there's this whole other thing that it could be, that you could have these cards read, and what my card is. And anyway, we'll obviously share in the show notes your website. It's a beautiful website. I loved going through the course and the graphics. Everything's really beautifully laid out. But yeah, so let's first tell us a story of how you got on this path of bringing it into your work.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So, I went to Boulder for a girls' trip in 2014, and we decided to go get an intuitive reading. And then when we sat down for the reading, the woman reading doing the reading says, "What's your birthday?" And she says, "You're the 6 of clubs." And I almost fell out of my chair because I was just like you. I was like, wait a minute, what? So she goes on to describe it. And by the time we had left Boulder, I had already purchased all of the books that I could find on Amazon. And so I was studying it for like maybe 3 or 4 weeks. And I kept thinking I should try to reach out to that woman and see if she would tutor me about this. And so I can understand it more, because the books are fine, but I just felt like I had a connection with her. And so I couldn't remember where I had put her business card. And I thought, well, I'll just have to figure out how to call that store and try to track her down. And I just kept putting it off because that seemed like a lot of work. And then one day I was digging around in my wallet and something fell out, and I bent over to the floor and picked it up, and I looked at it and it was her business card. And I looked up and I was like, okay, I got it. I'm going to sit down right now. And I emailed her, and she was getting ready to start a little class. So I basically trained on the cards with her for a couple of years, and she's just really brilliant. She's been studying them for 20 years. And then we went into business together and created these reports. And then we decided, the friend that I went to business with her, the 3 of us, we decided to sell her the business so she could take off with it however she wanted to. But we split up all the content. And then I decided to make all of the stuff, because it's kind of complicated. And it's like you said, it's like all these people that are into all of this stuff, into astrology, they have no idea this even exists. And so I'm trying to figure out, how can I make this easy for people to understand and just really straightforward and really fun and interactive. So I created a course for each card. So cardology, also known as the destiny card system, is based on the astrology and numerology of the playing cards. So you have a card for your birthday, and that card has a hand. So all of those phrases that we always say, like, oh, those are just the cards that she was dealt. I guess she's not playing her cards well. Like that's real. You have cards. And it's, the system is, nobody really knows where it came from or how far back. And they say Atlantis, that the tarot cards and that kind of thing came from all the way back then, that these have been like secrets that have been held on to for a while. And it's just like, until the consciousness is ready, they're not really ready to come out. And there was a man that wrote a book about this in like the 1900s. And that's sort of the first time it kind of came back out into public. So if you look up the history of the tarot cards and the playing cards, it's confusing where they came from and which came from when. And there's different cultures that kind of claim that they created them. So there isn't really like a straight and narrow path, which makes it even more mysterious. Mm-hmm. But so in your hand, you have your whole hand. And so every 6 of diamonds, so Megan's a 6 of diamonds, every 6 of diamonds has the same hand. And that means like your Mercury card will be like the way you communicate. And then if there's someone in your life with your Mercury card, you'll have a Mercury connection with them. So there's sort of like these inherent qualities. So on the one hand, compared with astrology, it's a little bit less complicated because, each astrology chart is just like so unique that you can't really pull anything apart from each other, like your rising sign, your sun sign, and then all of your angles and everything. But when you talk to a 6 of diamonds, you could say, here are the characteristics you have in common. So that's what's really in the course, is your personality, your characteristics. And then we have fun things in there, like your pro tips that can help you, and the questions you need to really look at, and your tendencies and your gifts and those kinds of things. So there's that piece of the personality. And then there's the relationships piece. So this part I think is so fascinating because 2 cards have a fixed relationship. So there's certain energies that sit between 2 cards, and you cannot change them. You cannot make these different energies. They just are what they are. And some of them are super yummy and mushy and gushy and like amazing. And others are very difficult. And so when you're in a difficult connection, like a karmic connection or a Pluto connection, you can feel the intensity of it. And so they all have their kind of like upsides and downsides, and we have reports for those too. And there's a third piece, and I do readings for this third piece, but you have a set of cards for every year of your birth. And then like there's 5 cards for each year, and then you have actually cards that rule every 52-day period. So it's all very mathematical, very based on like things being divided by 7, things being divided by 13, and then depending on what's going on in your cards, that kind of influences how your year is going. So it's really an amazing system. And there's like so much depth and insight into what you can learn about yourself through this system. And I'm sure you've been looking at your course. Was there something that jumped out at you that really you were like, oh my God, that's so me?
Well, no, I'll be honest. I got into sort of the generalities of the cards and then went down the rabbit hole of each of my family members and kind of got distracted. But and when you gave me like the very brief energy between my husband and I thought it was, quite uncanny. And then I tried to explain to him later and I'm like, it just wasn't as astute sounding or well worded. And I had to translate it into Spanish. So anyway, but
that's one of my goals actually, is to get it to translate it all and have it all in Spanish someday.
That's a big undertaking, but I'm sure you could do it. I would love to know, so do you give readings?
Mm-hmm.
Full read? So what does that look like if compared to what I learned in the course? How is a reading going to be different, or it's going to be much more of you getting to know me and then helping me see my life differently?
I would focus more on the cards for the year, the current period, because I feel like everything else is sitting out there in the courses and in the compatibility reports, that there's not much more I can give. Yeah. So it's more like someone that wants to know about what's going on right now with their energy and the cards. And I think for me, a lot of what this does is just makes you feel like you're not so crazy.
Well, yeah, you were telling me about a friend or somebody who's done like their readings for their whole life or a long period of time. Tell us about that.
She's, her name is Gina Jones. She's like one of the main cardology people. But she said that she has gone back and mapped out her whole life and looked at all the major events and how they play out in the cards. And she's like, I'm not sure we have free will. That's what she said to me. Because you can see all the energies, like you're working on this lesson at this time and bringing something to clarity. And it's very much the vibration of what the cards are saying that lines up with that.
And so can you, in theory, do it in the infinite future, or what do they tend to do, a year out or just the current year?
You can. It's hard for the future prediction just because because a lot of times what's actually happening in the cards is the people in your life are showing up in different positions. So if if you're in a long-term relationship, that would work because you could look out. But if you get a new job and you've got new coworkers and in 2 years, it's going to be hard to tell. It's too general to really specifically see what's going to really be happening in the future. Plus, a lot of this whole system is based on your perspective and how almost like your level of faith and your level of ability to kind of go with the flow. So the more you resist, the harder the cards are. Like say they're nines, and those mean endings or graduation. So you could be looking at the 9 as an ending and kind of being crushed by it, or you could look at it as a graduation and you're up leveling to the next thing. So a lot of it is how the person sees their life and the way they're looking at it. And then with all of the cards and the personality of the cards, we always say there's the low side and the high side to the cards. You can be operating out of the more ego-driven version of the card, or you can be operating out of the more spiritual version of the card. And all the cards have that low side and high side. So a 6, we're both 6s. So 6s, they would, on the low side, they would get stuck in ruts and just not really make changes and just let things be as easy as possible and not really push themselves. Because the symbols on the cards actually have meaning. So on a 6, there's 2 rows of pips, they call them, pointing the exact same direction. So you just have this one path that you're going down. On the high side of the 6, you're actually finding balance between downtime and working, or play and work, or whatever. It's being balanced. So, and the other thing that's really kind of another layer of this is it's like you bring to other people the quality of your card. So 6s bring balance to other people. When people are around 6s, they feel more balanced. But 6s are also trying to become more balanced. So it's you have this characteristic in you that other people can sense, and you're just bringing that to them, but you're also trying to find it yourself. You might not actually be balanced yourself, but you are bringing balance to other people. Does that make sense?
It does. I certainly resonate. Like the first 20 years of my life actually the first 30 years was stuck in a rut.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was like on the low end of the card. Can you talk a little bit, because I love the masculine, feminine, and, like the red suits are feminine and the black suits are masculine, and what that means in terms of the readings, because I'm a big fan of those energies.
Yeah. So let's see. Okay. So the black suits will be the clubs and the spades. The clubs are all about knowledge, and the spades are sort of another level of knowledge, wisdom. They're more like about encompassing the whole lifestyle. And that mental energy is a masculine energy. And then the red, the hearts, so the emotions. The hearts are the youth, kind of the youth suit. So people that are hearts tend to look more youthful. They often look like they have kind of heart-shaped faces, and the hearts represent the emotions. And then the diamonds represent our values. So when you're talking about the feminine and the masculine, I don't really think like it necessarily means people who are diamonds or hearts have more of a more feminine nature. That actually would be more to do with the numbers. So like, actually, I would say almost the card itself, like some cards. So for example, a 6 is, again, you're back to being balanced. I've never met a 6 female that's super girly, and I've never met a 6 guy that's super masculine. And then you have other options like the 5s and the 7s that might tend toward their gender a little bit more, toward the energy of their natural gender a little bit more than some of the other ones. But yeah, there's like a polarity there between the red and the black. So it's like that balance between the feminine and the masculine. And that's a really good question, because I haven't really considered.
I can see that you're like processing as you're answering this question.
I mean, because what I'm getting caught up on is because the personalities don't actually line up with the feminine and masculine. Mm-hmm. So like, it's going to be more inherent to the card itself, that idea that there's like more of a feminine energy in the card and the masculine energy. So it's like, when you're talking about the queens, men who are queens, it's like, I can almost tell, because men who are queens don't come across as super masculine, and women, my sisters are kings. Women who are kings don't come across very feminine. It's like natural. So it's more based, I would say, off of like the suits and numbers than the numbers in the face cards than the actual suits. But I do feel that the concept of the emotions and the values, which are hearts and diamonds, are sort of like containers. And when you would have a card that's a heart in your year, you would be more working with your emotions, be more in the feminine energy. When you would have a card that's a club for your year, you would be more working on that mental realm, which is more of a masculine energy. So that's where it would come in more, is when your cards are placed in your year.
Yeah. Well, I feel like that there, it sounds a lot like tarot, and that there's sort of the liberty of plugging it in where it's aligned, or, and on what level, and speaking in what place in your life at a given time. So yeah, for me, okay. And then tell me again, because you told me 2 cards. So what's the second card?
Your second card is the 10 of diamonds. And so what that has to do with, it's your Aries. So the Mars card in your hand is the 10 of diamonds. So because you're Aries, that's the second most important card. And I would say for me, they're equal. So I would always recommend people read both, but you can't figure out what your hand is without getting the course. But so like your 6 of diamonds, your 10 of diamonds are going to be very similar, or the energy is going to be very. You're almost going to not notice the difference between the two, is the way I would say that, because it's almost like your sun sign and your rising sign in astrology. People, they have certain characteristics, but you feel both of them almost equally.
Yeah, well, I found the whole thing fascinating. I'm looking forward to getting to know even more. So tell everyone how they can work with you and what are, besides the courses, what you wanted to present and share.
I've got a few things. So this fall, I'm taking a group on the Camino in Spain. So if you are wanting to walk the Camino, check that out. And I have sessions. I do the cardology recorded readings, and I do other kind of intuitive recorded readings. And then I have a coaching package, like if you want to work, like a spiritual mentorship package, if you want to check that out. And then all the card stuff is on my website. So you can look up, we kind of alluded to this, but you actually can read several paragraphs about your card and then decide.
Yeah, you don't have to purchase anything. You can get quite a bit just from looking up your card and every single family member's card.
Right. And then you can
there's like a couple, isn't there too? Like you can cross-reference two cards to see the
you can do the compatibility. Yeah, exactly. You can look that up and find out. And that's, and there's a little bit of information about that. And all of that's on my website, Laura the Intuitive, and lauratheintuitive.com. And I'm on Instagram under the same title, Laura the Intuitive.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom. And we'll be sharing all the information in the show notes. And I look forward to getting to know you better and finishing the course so I can answer your question more directly. This has just been so informative. Anything else you wanted to leave us with in terms of, tuning into your intuition? Let's not start with following, but, honing it.
Yeah. Just finding quiet time during the day, even if it's just for a couple of minutes here and there, I think is one of the most important things you can do, to tune in so you're not tuning outside of yourself.
Yeah, increasingly difficult and not a huge part of our culture, but it's, I think, really important for so many things.
Yeah.
To just take that space.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me on.
It's been a pleasure, and we'll be in touch.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much for listening to Energetically You. I hope that this episode has helped you to tune into your natural energy sources so that you feel more energized and focused throughout your day. If you enjoyed the episode, please take a second to rate and review. Each review helps us to help more ambitious women just like you accomplish their goals. Don't forget to take a screenshot, share it on social or in your Instagram stories, and tag me at Megan Swan Wellness. See you soon.